around us, because y'all, the drama is getting whack out there. So like, let's stay focused on the outcome, show up for your clients and do your best job. We happen to have a heck of a lot of things that are going to help you with that. If you were on scripts this morning, there were 39, not scripts, language of real estate conversations. We don't teach scripting. There were 39 humans when I popped in for 10 minutes on language of real estate with Stephen this morning. 39. His nuggets about how to help your buyers navigate through, is it a good time to buy? The interest rates are going up. I don't know what to do. I'm scared. Was amazing. So if you're not showing up on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday morning for language of real estate, that's there for you. Tomorrow morning, Stephen's going to be live in the room doing power prospecting and language of real estate together. Do you think it might be helpful to attend that and like lead gen in the room with people and get live coaching? I think so. And then, I don't know, we have like 10,000 things coming. If you haven't signed up for Bold Step 1, the good news is 35 of us humans, and there's 59 on here. So probably half of this crowd, or more than half, has signed up for Bold Step 1. That's the free one. Steps 2 through 7, you're going to get the fire and the fuel to really keep you going through the entire fourth quarter, right? So there's a bunch of stuff coming. I know that this time of year, I feel like I might be a telemarketer, no offense, telemarketers, or a salesperson, or like I'm on a commercial where like, but wait, there's more. Buy now and you get 2 sessions for the price of 1. The point is, you guys, there's never been a market where your learning is more important, because the past 2 years, you haven't had to think the same way that you have before that, right? So if you've been in real estate for 2 years or less, you really don't even know about how to work before the market was madness. Okay, that's my market of the moment update. It was longer than it should have been, but I felt it was important. If you have something to share that's an exact story, raise your hand for the end and we'll come back to it. And I want someone to fill a bucket before we go on, because we've been like popping over the bucket fills lately. So I want to make sure we get to bucket fills today. So who has a bucket to fill?
I'll start with Sarah.
You go.
Evie.
Yes, I just want to give our Movement Mortgage a huge shout out again for our being our sponsor last week for the in-person team meeting kickoff. Thank you all for always jumping on board and supporting all of our social events, especially now that we're bringing them in person. Thank you very, very much on that one. And Bridget, of course, our culture queen, for always like thinking of all these little social events to keep us all engaged.
Awesome. Thank you, Evie, and thank you, Movement. Anybody else? I thought I heard another voice.
Yes. I would like to say I'm really grateful to my loan officer, Anthony. Anthony, if you're here, you're amazing. He is just like, he's a diamond. I mean, he's got the flu right now. I hope he gets better. He's co-hosting with me my very first community event this Sunday. And he said, even if he is not up to coming, he's still going to fulfill what he promised to me, which was providing the food and a shade canopy. But I really hope, Anthony, if you're listening, that you get better. I'm sending you good juju, because you're just so great, and you're there for me, and you're also there for my prospects and my future clients, and I'm very grateful to you.
That is awesome. Thank you for filling that bucket, Andrea.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm here. I'm just sounding kind of crappy, but yes, I'm here.
Love you, Anthony. Love you, Anthony.
And thank Stephanie, you. I'll pop to you. Thanks you, Andrea, and thank you, Anthony. And Stephanie, let's pop to you too. I see your hand is up.
Yes, I just wanted to say, like, Ignite is almost over, and all of these amazing agents took time out of their busy schedules and their lead generation and their follow-up to help us new agents to learn and navigate the business. And I want to say thank you. I got so much from every one of you, and I really appreciate everybody taking their time to help us.
Stephanie, thanks for shouting out the instructors. You're right. It's so important. I was just looking at the totals, and I bet Jacqueline will pull them up before it's time for her to talk. I know I want to shout out, there are prizes coming to our 4 top humans, and we'll get to that later, but Jessica, Matthew, Christian, and Barb all attended more than half of the sessions, and we're so proud of you for all that you did. And there's more people are watching online. There's so much goodness we know. but we said in the beginning, people who could show up in person were going to get rewarded. So stay tuned for that. We're super excited to see. And I believe I saw Jessica that's coming up on the coaching shout out for a transaction. So we'll see how that all correlates. Thank you, ALC, Top 20, everyone who's teaching Ignite, and thank you, Movement, for supporting us all. I really appreciate you. And Evie,
Yes.
go ahead with your celebrations, and I appreciate you, love, for keeping us on track all the time. I know I'm over. It's okay.
Thank you. Speaking of movement, I also want to thank specifically Eddie and Matt for providing tomorrow's bagels and coffee for the in-person language of real estate in power prospecting. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for that one. So come, please, let's fill in the space tomorrow. I also want to say our birthday shout outs for the remainder of September. Allison Carey on the 19th, Raquel Dominic on the 24th, Eugene Bourgia on the 25th, Tracy Simmons on the 25th, Eddie Hernandez on the 27th, and Sam on the 29th. Happy birthday to everyone. And also wanted to do a huge shout out to our team, The Blooms, Amy and Gary, for making the KW SoCal region leaderboard for the month of August. Congratulations.
Awesome. Okay, and I will throw it over to our SMP partner today. Heather is here from Free Model. You guys, we have talked about different concierge models before. Bridget brought us Heather, and Ashley and I met with her online a couple of weeks ago, and just listen to what she says, because the tools they're offering you are ridiculous. So Heather, take it away.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And I got some little nuggets from your conversation, Sarah, so I appreciate that as well. So I've got a quick 5-minute presentation I'll go through. So we'll get right into it. So Free Model is a pre-sales home renovation service provider helping you agents sell homes for more. As Sarah mentioned, they're also referred to as concierge programs for those of you that have leveraged that in the past. So Free Model has local boots on the ground project directors who will be managing your projects with the homeowner as well. We've got about 35 projects directors right now, plan to be about 40 to 50 by the end of the year. And I have a little bit of a deeper map that I'll show here shortly. We have 475 local subcontractors that are all vetted out, meaning making sure they're licensed, bonded, and insured, checking out their BBB rating. So we have a team that is specifically dedicated to onboarding all of those subcontractors.
Heather, are you screen sharing?
Oh no, is it not working?
It's not working. We're seeing a still screen of a notes or something.
Oh, well, I don't think you want to see my notes with Anne. Now are
there you go. Now it's working. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you I couldn't tell what screen it was on. So this is what I was talking through.
Yeah, okay.
And then lastly, we have deep design skills within Free Model as well. So all of our local subcontractors are renovation trade experts themselves, but we also have an interior design company in-house. So we have super friendly business terms for your homeowners. We don't have a cap on what we're willing to spend. So we've done everything from $5,000 cosmetic renovation projects to $500,000. So we're typically looking to target a 2.5x return. And essentially we are deferring our payment up to 400 days, which will then be paid out of escrow when the home sells. So to dive in a little deeper, when we're done with the project and our project director gives you the home back, essentially you as the agent have 1 year to get it into contract, and then an additional 35 days to close. And then we're not a lender, so there's not going to be any interest fees or any hidden charges for the homeowner. Essentially, they will get a fixed bid final quote, and that's exactly what they will be paying us back for. From a contractual perspective, we Free Model will do a home improvement contract directly with the homeowner, so leaving the brokerage and the agent out of any liability there. And we will also do a seller's escrow demand for the same dollar value that home improvement contract is for. Now, for any projects that are greater than $50,000, we do a deed of trust as a security instrument. So we have one underwriting criteria to qualify your homeowner. We will look at the balance of their current mortgage plus whatever our project cost is cannot exceed 70% of the after renovation value. And we do have a 1-year warranty that is passed over to the new buyer for extra protection. So we have a broad range of services. I mean, we will cover anything and everything that you can think of. So moving expenses, dehoarding, decluttering, interior, exterior paint, landscaping, full-blown kitchen bathroom remodels, and a big one are those last 2 bullet points on the left-hand side, cleaning and staging. I know a lot of you Asians pay out of pocket for staging. So that is something that we can actually include in our scope of work to cover for you. The things that we're looking to stay away from is anything that could take a long time during the permitting process. So any new additions, any new ADUs, and then we're specifically focused on residential in those urban and suburban areas. So although you guys are in San Diego, if you make your way out of San Diego, we've got you covered. We're all the way out in Palm Springs, cover all the way up to Santa Barbara, IE, Riverside, San Bernardino, etc. So I got a couple case studies to show you guys. This is a little baby bungalow that we did in South Bay, spent $46,000, earned the homeowner an extra $151,000. This one was pretty much a remodel of the entire little bungalow. So everything from the kitchen to the bathroom was remodeled. You can see new paint, as well as staging we did in this one too. This one I think was in Manhattan Beach, if I'm remembering correctly, spent $145,000, earned the homeowner an extra $929,000. And you can see this after photo, not the biggest renovation, but we did, making it light and bright, added some new backsplash, did some staging, closed up this cabinetry here, and then did a refresh on that bathroom. And then one more case study. This is more on the cosmetic side. Spent about $42,000, earned the homeowner an extra $108,000. This one's more of that paint, carpet, landscape, and then we did some staging throughout. So one of the things I wanted to point out here is we will do condos, townhomes, single family homes. We've done everything from $300,000 homes to $6 million. So we've got you covered no matter what market you're working in. So if you want to learn more, this is just a little snippet of our program, but I am working with Evie to coordinate a lunch and learn. So that date is to be announced. But if you do have a project in the meantime that you want to leverage FreeModel on, you can always go to our website, freemodel.com. And there's a little button here that says, let's talk. And one of our business development representatives will reach out to you and answer questions that you might have or help you with one of your projects. So I will stop sharing, Evie, and see if anyone has any other questions, but I know you guys have several other topics to get to as well.
Thank you, Heather. I know that we're excited about it. Bridget, did you just go to come off mute? I saw you up here. No.
Thanks for the clap, Eric.
Yeah. This listings are going to be even more vital to get top dollar to earn that price that you're looking for your people. So really look at the services, realize that it's a very different system. You don't need to go through all the complicated hoops. So if it's relevant for you, which if you're doing listings, it is, click in and follow up with Heather and ask questions. Like I said, Bridget brought her to us and she was using her and loving her. So yeah, so excited to have you guys as part of our team. So thanks, Heather. We'll look out for the lunch and learn, and we're super excited to work together in the future.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Looking forward to working on some projects together.
Yeah, BB, take us away with the launch and growth spotlight, please. The mute button is on the left, on the bottom.
Hey everybody, Broker Bob here. Let's give some shout outs for people doing some amazing things in the coaching program. On Team Alicia, she got Yvette, Deborah, Beth, Gaga, Edward, Priscilla, Benji, all registered for First Step to Bold. So if you haven't registered, we highly recommend you do that today because this will sell out the first step. The first step is free. Just get there. You will walk away with something that will help you in today's market. You'll learn 3 valuable tools. On Coach Carl's team, Jessica Limbaugh opened her first escrow from an open house lead in her first 6 weeks of being in launch coaching. Great job, Jessica. Congratulations. And our favorite Emmanuel closed an escrow and growth, and Matt Thornburg has opened 3 escrows in the month of September. Or he has 3 closings going. He opened them in August, but they're going to close in September. Great job, Matt. Good to see him out there working hard. On Team Deborah, Corrine, our little lovely lady, opened an escrow on her Escondido listing. She's in growth. That makes 3 escrows for the month of September alone for her. So far, she might have some more. And she is on fuego. I'm very proud of you, Corrine. And then Team Deborah got Katie, Roy, Julianne, and Eric signed up for First Step. So we will see them there. And it'll go back to you guys until I come back with risk management. You don't want to miss today. I'm covering things that you guys are so confused about. Hopefully we'll make some clarity on it.
We will be right back to BB with all those updates. For now, we will come to Movement Mortgage to hear what the heck is going on in the land of mortgages.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We just wanted to let you know that if you haven't heard already, the Federal Reserve raised the Fed fund rate by another 0.75% today, which was expected. So mortgage rates were trading pretty flat after last week's uptick, but rates are still pretty elevated for buyers. So we would like to encourage you to have your buyers explore options with us or their lender for 2-for-1 buy downs, where they would have a lower interest rate for the first year of the mortgage, and then step up to a slightly higher interest rate the second year, and then have the third year at the full interest rate that they would have for their loan. This is a great way to help minimize the payment shock for a new buyer purchasing a home in the high interest rate market. And it's my experience, we're having some good luck with having some sellers pick up the tab for this, depending on how negotiations go with the contract. So just want to put that tool in your toolbox for your hip pocket to help your buyers win in this market. Need any more, if you have any more questions or need any more information, we'll always be here to help you. Thanks for your time. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Wes. You guys, there's a bunch of creative solutions. Reach out and find out what they are, because it is not all just like A plus B equals C. That's not how you get deals done as the market shifts. Okay. Jacqueline, Director of Agent Growth update. She has something exciting for us.
Yes, so tomorrow I am getting trained on how to teach all of you how to host a home buying seminar. If that is your one thing, if that is your style of lead generation, throw your email in the chat. On Monday, I'm going to send the recording of me teaching how to teach a seminar, and I'm going to give you a free pre-built custom template that you can use, throw your information into, and then go use to host that seminar. So if that is your jam, if that is your lead gen, throw it in the chat. I will connect with you on Monday and get you the recording and the good template.
These are also going to be the people who you saw me tease this on our Facebook page about the Your First Home seminar. So some of you commented there. That's also awesome. If you're there, you're good. If not, comment here or go to the Facebook page and comment there. Together, you're going to get this amazing seminar in a box to go help other people do more things like UT, first time home buyers, go help people. Okay, property pitches, and then we will get to risk management. Who has a new listing to pitch? I'm only like 10 minutes over, it's fine. Anyone listing any properties and want to talk about it? If not,
if you like.
If you would like, Judy, I would like whatever you would like.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I still have this listing in if anybody knows where Imperial is, it's right near to El Centro. I know it's really far out, but man, for $475,000, you can get a 22 square foot house with 3 full baths, 4 bedrooms with a downstairs bedroom, beautiful backyard. It's awesome. I know that there's a lot of business out there, and people who live in Mexico who don't mind going across the border. It's definitely close enough. I got very good response this weekend. I may be getting some offers in, but if you have anybody, let me know and we'll set up a showing for you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Judy. Anybody else with a hot new property? Nobody else has raised their hand. So now we go to BB because he has lots of good stuff. Go ahead, Broker Bob. If you have other stuff, write it in the chat.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everybody. It's really nice to see 67 people on this call when it's risk management. So today we have a really good interactive one. Mark's going to serve as backup for a portion of this. And we're going to cover something that's been showing up in a lot of the transactions and confusion from you as an agent, and we'll get to what it is. But welcome to the risk management meeting for August of 2022. We're going to review a little bit of what's going on at SJR, risk management, what's the hot topics they're talking about. What we're going to cover is the FHDS, the fire hardening and point of sale compliance. This is the result of the fact that California is a tinderbox. And this is now will be a point of sale requirement that this gets taken care of, but it's so confusing. We're going to try and break it down and make it simple about what you need to do and how you need to talk to your sellers and buyers about it. And I'm going to cover 15 steps to stay out of court. Hopefully I'll get to all of them. That's usually an entire class, but we'll see. All right, let's get into it. What are we talking about at risk management? Well, here's my input. Just be kind to one another. Remember, you're in a business where ethics and cooperation matter. Ethics mean we operate by the NAR Code of Ethics. And then cooperation, cooperating broker means we cooperate with our team members, our other brokers, outside brokers, etc. So remember those just as you move through your day. There's a lot of crazy stuff sometimes that happens in this business, but you got to shake it off and be the better person. That's it. I do this every time because there's always new people here. But if you're ever in a lawsuit or you have a lawsuit against you, what is the number one thing a buyer or seller will say to me as your broker if they want to sue you and the brokerage?
My realtor didn't tell me that.
Yeah, your agent never told me that. So we're going to cover some of that today in the 15 steps to staying out of court.
Hey, Robert, did you have a slide deck that you wanted to show? Because you're just, it's not up if you did.
Oh, Mark, thanks for letting me know. I forgot to share my screen. Duh.
No problemo.
All right. So let's get into the home hardening, okay? Because this is what Mark is we're gonna go back and forth on. So what was this the result of? I talked about earlier. It's the fact that California is a tinderbox. So in July of this year, there's a new compliance with what is called defensible space linked to the sale of residential properties beginning July 1st. Now, I'm just taking this from the CAR website. And usually if I have a real estate agent or an agent in our office that wants information on it, I'll send this to them. But unfortunately, RDR, because it's a lot in here. So I'm going to kind of dumb it down for you guys today. So as a result of AB 38, which passed in 2019, took effect in July 21st, sellers of properties that are located in a high or very high fire hazard zone will need to either provide documentation that their property is in compliance with defensible space laws, or two, buyers will be required to agree to obtain such documentation of compliance in the future. This law applies to sales of residential 1 to 4 properties, condos, or other common interest development units, or manufactured homes. It also applies to homes where the property is located in a high or very high hazard severity zone, and when a TDS, that's a transfer disclosure statement, is required. In addition to defensible space requirements, a law may also require the buyer or seller to comply with local. So in other words, what is the municipality that they're in? Is it San Diego? Is it Escondido? Is it El Cajon? Vegetation Management Ordinance. Vegetation management is a less precise term, but in the context of this law will generally mean clearing the vegetation that may create fire hazards. So, is it a point of sale, or does the AB law create a requirement that the seller obtain a defensible space inspection report or certification of compliance prior to closing? No, with the very rare exception of a local point of sale ordinance, that would mean what municipality it's in, defensible space already be in effect. Otherwise, this law will allow a buyer and seller to agree that the buyer may assume the responsibility for compliance. And as of December 2021, The FHDS, the fire hardening defensible space, blah, 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 is intended to be delivered as a disclosure within the first 7 days after acceptance. Previously, it was recommended that this form be integrated into the purchase agreement at its inception as part of the offer or counteroffer. Well, when they revised the RPA in December, they put it as a separate disclosure that should be delivered within 7 days after an offer is accepted. And then as of June 2022, the defensible space decision tree, the DSDT, which is the form that will provide instructions to enable any seller to complete the defensible space portion of the FHDS form in step-by-step manner based on their knowledge and investigations. And as part of this effort at ease of use, the form FHDS itself has been revised to be used in conjunction with the DSDT. So what is defensible space? Well, if you go to a property and you see that it's in dry brushes and trees and shrubs, and it's pretty close to the house or common interest development, that's defensible space. So what are they saying? You need to remove all of that stuff within a certain amount of feet of the house, within up to 100 feet. So get rid of all the dead plants, the dead or dry leaves, remove the branches, trim trees, relocate wood piles, prune plants and shrubs near windows, remove vegetation, basically just put rock around your house for fire months. Because if you don't want your house to catch on fire in California, that's what you're going to need. Zone 2, 100 feet out from buildings and other structures. Property owners might have to do the following: cut or mow annual grass down to a maximum height of 4 inches, create horizontal space between shrubs and trees, create vertical space between grass, shrubs, and trees, and remove fallen leaves, needles, twigs. So basically, if you're in the country, this is definitely going to apply to you. Pretty much the way we look at it is it's going to be pretty much the entire San Diego County unless you hear otherwise, okay? So what are some of the things that we're seeing in the transactions, and what are some of the questions that Mark or I get? And now I'm going to bring in Mark, and he's going to talk about, so we kind of know what, the FHDS has to be delivered 7 days after an offer is accepted as part of the disclosure packet. But what does Mark see in some of the transactions that is a cause for alarm? And then he's got to guide the agent on how to guide their seller and or buyer in the transaction. Mark?
Yeah, so I know this is a complex issue, and you start to think about it, you look at the forms and you just kind of glaze over, but it actually can be worked through very systematically, and you have to really help your buyers and sellers understand this. So this FHDS form is required for the seller to deliver it to the buyer if the NHD report indicates that the property is in a high or very high fire zone. There's another category on the NHD that says wildfire zone that does not require the FHDS to be delivered. To kind of go back to Robert's recap, this defensible space law has been in place for a long time, and every homeowner should probably be considering, having defensible space so that their homes don't catch fire in the event of a wildfire. But the requirement for the seller to make the disclosure to the buyer is really only when the NHD indicates that the property is in a high or very high fire zone. So what I'm seeing in transactions, I'm seeing a property that's not in a high or very high fire zone. We're representing the buyer, and the seller sends the form over. Sometimes it's completed, sometimes it's not, and the buyer signs it. Well, our buyer shouldn't be signing that. There's no reason for our buyer to agree to something, to do something that they don't have to do. So, we have to watch out for that. If that form comes over and it's not correct, it's not required to be delivered, our buyer has no obligation to sign it. Another thing that's going to be happening, because our market is shifting now from a seller's market to a buyer's market, buyers are now starting to ask, well, is the defensible space work done? And if it's not, I think I want to ask for that as a repair, because, you know, this hypothetical home that we're looking at, maybe it's on a canyon and it has 200 feet down in a canyon of brush and nothing's ever been cleared or anything like that. If the buyer promises to do that by signing the FHDS agreement, and then they find out after close of escrow that they have someone come in to estimate the cost of doing it. So let's say, just pick a number, $5,000. And all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I didn't know I was going to have this huge expense. When where are they going to come back to? They're going to come back to the buyer's agent. Why didn't you tell me about this? So whether you're representing a buyer or representing a seller, you really have to be knowledgeable about this subject, so that if you're representing a buyer, you could potentially advise the buyer to ask for this, and the seller may or may not, you know, agree with it, but you could at least ask for it, just like you'd ask for any repair on a home. And if you're representing a seller, you have to be able to advise a seller when they need to make this disclosure and when they can negotiate with a buyer, whether they, you know, do it or not. If you have someone tell you, oh, you have to have this report, this inspection done, that's not true. There's no requirement to have a report done if the seller's selling the home. If they have a report because CAL FIRE came and inspected or something like that, then the seller has a duty to disclose that report to the buyer, just like any report they might have. But they don't have to obtain one as a requirement of transferring the title. So that's kind of the overview of what I'm seeing in transactions, and my recommendations from when you're representing the buyer or the seller. Does anybody have any questions about that overview and what Robert talked about?
I think one of the questions that you get a long time is, and so it's question 12 on this Q&A. How do condos owner comply with defensible space rules if they have no legal right to make the alterations to any common area? We've had that a couple times because they find out that the condo is in a high fire area according to NHD. Well, there's no specific exemption for them, but they do have, there's no specific exemption for defensible space compliance based on ownership in a common interest development. This defensible space law itself does not require that person to comply with it. They do, and they do not have the legal right. So,
well, they do have to complete the form and send it. And so the recommendation I've been making is for the seller, homeowner in a common interest development, to contact the homeowners association and say, do we have a defensible space policy? And perhaps disclose that to the buyer on the receipt for reports or some other, you know, manner. Deliver that to the buyer as a disclosure. But the seller in a common interest development does still have to complete the form if the property is in a high or very high fire zone. I see Susan has her hand up.
Yes, thanks, Mark. I was just going to suggest, especially for our newer agents, addressing the NHD report that often states it both ways, and the confusion that can cause.
Do you mean it says it's in a high or very high fire zone and or a wildfire zone? Because there's two sections on there. Is that what you're referring to?
Oftentimes one of the sections will say it's in a high fire zone, and then on the next page it'll say it's not.
Oh, okay.
And I've had to call NHD, my reps multiple times because it's so confusing.
That is an NHD report preparation issue and should be addressed with the NHD company if there's a disparity between the signature page and the report page.
There is other ways to find out. It's in question 18. How can the buyer seller determine? Contact the local fire marshal, contact a reputable NHD. Remember, they're not regulated. So you might consider a different NHD company. Use the Fire Hazard Severity Zone Viewer, the FHV, which allows anyone to input the property address and determine which zone it's in, or speak with an attorney.
Well, and another thing is, if you go to place the order to have the inspection done, oftentimes you can learn from them, from the fire department, that whether you are or you aren't. I'm just sharing this out loud in case it
No,
helps.
and that's good. But remember too, that you do not have to order a report or inspection when you list a home for sale. The seller does not have an obligation to get a report if they're selling the home, unless maybe the buyer wrote that into the offer. I've seen that. The seller will provide an AB 38 inspection report. So if it's a condition of the purchase agreement and the parties agree to it, well, then the seller does have to do that. But if it's unspoken, then, and the property is not in a high fire zone, the seller has no obligation to get the report. Even if it's in a high fire zone, the seller has no obligation to get a report. The parties have to decide what they're going to do. Who's going to be responsible for this cost of this defensible space, either before close of escrow being the seller's responsibility, or after close of escrow being the buyer's responsibility. And those are choices that are defined in the FHDS form.
And I think the important part is for the agent, whether listing agent or buyer agent, be aware and how to navigate and walk the client through this, so that, you know, you don't want to end up doing a sale with a buyer that you didn't review the FHDS, and then all of a sudden they find out, or, you know, stuff like this happens. Your agent didn't tell me this. We have to spend $20,000 to clear out this shrub because now we're the owner and we're responsible for it. And that's where I'm fearful of this when this came about. I'm like, there's going to be probably some transactions that end up in court on this because the agent did not guide the buyer properly in their high fire zone purchase they made a year ago. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that doesn't happen. But that's why we're kind of covering it today. This is not a point of sale requirement. I mean, like, it doesn't have to be done. But as Mark said, the buyer and seller have to agree who's going to assume the responsibility for compliance. And that needs to be defined in the purchase agreement.
And
not after close of escrow in the purchase agreement.
And you want to make sure that the buyer understands the, you know, the extent of, if they say, well, okay, we'll do that, but they may not fully understand what it's going to take to be in compliance. And that's what we're concerned about, is that awareness after the fact, where it turns out, oh, this is much more expensive than I thought it was going to be.
So hopefully that helped clear up some of the questions you guys might have with it. I know it's a lot to go through.
As those questions come up, just reach out to us and we'll help you with the questions, because there's unique situations, and again, there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding. So please just reach out to us.
Can I ask a question now that may be general?
Sure, Russ, go ahead.
Is there ever a reason why a buyer's agent would not advise their buyer to have the seller produce an NHD?
Well, the NHD is required by law. It has to be a part of the transaction. So typically the seller will pay for the NHD report unless the seller is exempt from providing it. And a good example of that would be a probate sale, or for example, an REO sale. Sometimes when we had those years ago, the sellers would not provide NHDs, and then the buyer would have to bear the cost of the NHD, because it's something that's required by law, and you can't waive a legal requirement that is based on law. You can't just say, well, we won't have one. You know, you have to have one.
So the question, I guess, is really, is the buyer paying for it or the seller paying for it?
The buyer would pay, the seller would pay for the NHD report in the exception, unless the seller was exempt for some reason, like the two examples I just gave.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Bridget, you had a question?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out, so in the purchase contract on under the allocation of costs, if you look at Q5 and Q6, it talks about the government required points of sale inspection reports and then the corrective remedial. when you're going over that with your buyer, would that be included in that, or does that count towards that, or is that totally separate?
That section used to be, considered kind of like only for water conservation issues.
Right.
But now the way, when they redesigned the RPA in 1221, they added that section in the grid to make it broader so that it would apply to other government required items like this. So it's a great question, and I think maybe one that we'll ask our legal about, because does it only apply to the request for the report? I mean, if the home is not in a high or very high fire zone, or even if it is, does the buyer have the right to request the seller to give a report? Yeah, they could ask for it, just like they could ask for anything, and they could mark it in that section, or they could mark it in 3R, but the seller doesn't have to do it, because there's, like, again, well, that's the point I really wanted to emphasize, is there is no point of sale requirement for a seller to get a report. If they have a report, it has to be disclosed.
That section seems very vague, where it seems like it could just be opening it up to a lot of different things, and it seems like on the listing side we should counter it out.
I think that you're right. That section was designed to be broad so that it could address a number of government required issues that come up now or in the future. So, but yes, your second point is that in advising your seller, if the buyer asks for an AB 38 inspection report, you can say, we're not going to do that. And just like we could say, we're not going to do a termite inspection report. Then what happens? Then it becomes the buyer's responsibility to investigate. And could a buyer order an AB 38 report? I'm not sure about that, because maybe the homeowner would have to be the one who would say, I'd like to have my property inspected, and they're the only one who can authorize that inspection. So that's another open question we don't really know.
That's the confusion. Okay, moving on. I've got 13 minutes to go out of 15 steps to stay out of court. So I'm going to have to breeze through some of these. Number one, how to stay out of court: document your file. That's why we have a compliance process with our office. It's a lot of work. We require some documentation that you guys are like, do we have to do another form? There's only a reason why we ask for a form, and that is, it's probably happened in a transaction that we ended up in litigation on, that form was not provided. And so that's why we add that form. So it's all to keep you safe. Number two, know your limitations. And Mark, thank you, by the way, for your wisdom on the FHDS. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure the team appreciates it too.
No problem.
Number two, know your limitations. Learn to be comfortable with uncertainty. Know what hat you are wearing. If you do not know something, say so, and then get the answer from a qualified authority. It's much better if you don't know the answer, show your buyer or seller where they can get the answer. I use Sal as a reference all the time, because he gets this to the nth degree. Even though he might know something, he's very careful about his words. He wants to make sure that the buyer or seller go and get their own research. Number three, do not misrepresent. Do not speak carelessly. As a professional, a real estate licensee must exercise a higher degree of skill and diligence than a non-professional. Negligent misrepresentation is a major cause of lawsuits. Specifically, the broker is charged with more than a layman's knowledge of the real estate broker business. So if you're a broker in our office, Bridget, my heir apparent, or Alicia, you guys are held to a higher standard because you're a broker. So know your shit, girls. It's really kind of what I'm saying. Show up. Use care in recommending inspectors. This can get you in trouble, where you recommend an inspector, let's say a house inspector that says get a secondary inspection on the pool, and then the pool inspector comes in and clears the house, and then the homeowner moves in and they find there's a leak in the pool. But you referred that pool inspector to the person. That's where you can get in trouble. So the way you refer inspectors or service providers is you say, here's some that I've used in the past. I highly recommend them. But we also say that if you want to go get your own, please please do some research on that. Don't necessarily assume that you're going to always use the same inspector for stuff. Because if that inspector messes up and that homeowner wants to go sue everybody, they're going to sue you because you gave them the recommendation. Watch your fiduciary duty. We talk about this in contracts class, which by the way is coming up at the end of October, 4 sessions. Your fiduciary duty, what does fiduciary means? Above all others. You put your principal above everybody. You, the office, the other agent, the other party. Your duty comes before closing the deal. A broker owes the principal the same obligations of diligent and faithful service that a trustee owes to a beneficiary of a trust. Okay, so know your fiduciary duty. Come to contracts class and you can learn. Observe and document. You are required to make a reasonable, competent, and diligent visual inspection of the accessible areas of the property. This is what's called the AVID, the AVID, and to disclose to prospective buyers all facts materially affecting the value and desirability of the property, at least in California. In the TDS, do not volunteer conclusions as to the cause of anything you disclose, and do not diagnose or characterize, just cite factual observations. In other words, what can you see? I see a stain on the wall. You won't put stain on the wall, possibly mold. You don't know, you didn't do a mold test. Number 7, keep a risk management practice. Attend Broker Bob's monthly risk management classes and contracts training. I know you guys are here because we're taking attendance, and I know who doesn't show up. And those are the ones that typically are getting in trouble. You can also attend the board and association seminars and read the trade publications that Car Legal puts out, go through the Q&As. This is where you are valuable in the eyes of your principals. If you can help, like the FHDS, if you can help a seller navigate through that or a buyer navigate through that, that's where your value is now seen. Hey, I really need your help on this. Number 8, avoid multiple contracts. Do not jump the gun. Avoid situations can lead to 2 contracts on the same property. Exercise the utmost care with multiple offers, backup offers, and contingencies. This has happened a couple times where the person didn't send out a multiple counteroffer. They sent out just a counteroffer and they accepted 2 deals. Thank God that one of the buyers said, okay, we'll go away. This was about 6 years ago. It wasn't during the run-up market. I love for sale by owner properties as an opportunity to get a listing, but they do have some red flags. It's the seller is the seller doing something besides just wanting to save a commission? And have you unwittingly become the seller's agent by, you create agency by performing agent type duties, creating a CMA, giving them information about zoning, stuff like that. So you don't want to be dragged into something with a FSBO that you really didn't have a listing on. Number 10, my favorite, do not act as a lawyer. Do not give legal advice, such as telling the buyer or seller that they should or should not initial the arbitration clause. Arbitration is a decision for the principal. Another example, do not attempt to explain the legal ramifications of the liquidated damages clause. Risk management tools are available to eliminate most of these problem area. Consider referring your client to an attorney. Anytime there's a legal issue, that's exactly what the script I give you guys. When you need to talk to your principal, and let's say they want to start suing somebody, and you'll say, well, now this has become a legal matter, and neither I nor Keller Williams can provide legal advice. We highly recommend you speak to a qualified California real estate attorney to determine your next steps. Once you find that out, please report back to us as to what your action you may or may not take. And by the way, if you need any documentation, we're more than happy to provide that to you. But because this is legal, it's unethical for me to give you legal advice. 11, stick to what you know. In other words, don't be a know-it-all. Stick to your specialty. Your specialty is helping people navigate through the transaction. You can't know everything about the property, and probably the less you know, the better. But how to help the buyer or seller find the people to talk to is really what you're good at. Number 12, this is often overlooked. Review your title reports. Do you actually know how to read a title report? If not, I would get together with your title rep in the office and say, can you help me? Can you show me what this means? You need to know what's in there. Some of the things that pop up on title would be a lien that the seller did not know of or didn't disclose to the listing agent. And all of a sudden they're in escrow, and then the seller finds out there's this lien. And you as the listing agent didn't even bother reviewing the report and saw that there was a lien and questioned that early on. So read that title report. That's why you get a PR, preliminary title report, before you go on a listing agreement or listing presentation. Use standard forms and procedures, meaning use CAR forms. CAR forms are there to protect us. So our zip forms are, help us with the transaction. We don't like these other companies that have created their own forms. And if that does happen, we have a procedure for that where we say, look, this is a form from this company that I don't know how to interpret because there's a lot of legal language. I need you, if they're requiring you to sign this form, you need to speak to a qualified real estate attorney, California real estate attorney, as to what this means. Number 14, disclose agency relationships. Again, we cover this in contracts, but when does it need to be disclosed? As soon as possible. So typically at your first meeting, you need to disclose what agency is and have them sign the agency disclosure form. Besides that, it gets them in the habit of starting to sign stuff. Okay. And then 15, act on a claim immediately. What to do if you become aware of a claim? Talk to your broker, get as much information from the claimant as possible, attempt to resolve or settle early, avoid making any admission, do not write on original documents, and provide a detailed narrative memorandum to your attorney, and be candid about facts that show you were possibly at fault. If necessary, use mediation, get appropriate legal advice, and make prudent business decisions. Remember, justice can be a very expensive commodity. And where agents get in a lot of trouble is when we talk about keeping a file, clean file is having a communication log where you discuss, very important, you put in a communication log, meaning you memorialize all those important conversations you had with a buyer about their purchase of their home, like for instance, the home hardening. You've had that conversation with them that I want you to understand, you put that in an email, you're going to buy this home and you and the seller have agreed that you will make the necessary repairs within the time you need to. That way they can't come back and say, you never told me so. Well, I hope I covered some stuff today that you guys helped. Did it help? Did it not help? But I hope you learned something today and you take back. And we only lost 10 people, so 10 people fell asleep. But I appreciate your time today, and I'll let Sarah close it out.
Bridget summed it up in the chat really nicely. Hi, I'm your realtor. I'd like to sell your home, but please don't tell me anything. The less I know, the better, per my broker Bob. BB and Mark, thank you for all the great info and helping us navigate the wild, wild world of real estate. Hope to see y'all tomorrow for Power Prospecting and Language of Real Estate. And, stay tuned for another great week ahead. See you in person next week in the room for lunch and Ashley Stats. Toodles!